Okay, I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is the City of San Diego Commission on Police Practices Ad Hoc Transition Planning Committee meeting of November the 17th, 2022. And attending via Zoom are myself, Doug Case as chair, Brandon Hilpert, I'm chair of the committee. Brandon Hilpert is chair of the commission. We have Commissioners Nancy Vaughn and Diana Dent. We have our liaison with the San Diegans for Justice, who is Katie Evandetti from Women to Occupy. And from staff, we have Charmaine Mosley, our interim executive director, and Elena Conde, our executive assistant. And then we have Dave Niemeyer, who is with CPS HR, who is our executive search firm. And so I think the next item, I'm going to put the agenda back up. And next item, I believe, is public comment. Did we receive any public comment?
No public comment received.
Okay. Then we can go on to updates. A budget process. Well, Charmaine mentioned that she's going to a budget training today. So I guess we can report that. And she's excited about that. And we did, when we had our meeting with Raul Campillo earlier this week, we asked whether or not the budget situation with the city might affect the commission, because the city is facing a significant shortfall this year. And he indicated he didn't think so. He said that as long as we were within the limits that were perceived by the budget analyst, independent budget analyst, and the arguments for the Measure B proposal, that he felt that the city council would feel compelled to, give the commission its full budget. And so hopefully that's good news. Staffing, actually, nobody want to talk about it now. We're in a new business, but we're basically was going to be doing an update on a status update on our staffing. So why don't we wait for just a second, do that and turn to new business. Implementation ordinance and amended standard operating procedures. Nothing specific on that, but I did get a text from Charmaine prior to the meeting regarding the two standard operating procedures that the commission proposed. And she indicated that it's going through the routing process with the city, and the indication is it probably will not be heard until January because of the holidays. That it's unlikely that it can be docketed before then. And it sounds like they're going to go to PSNL first. And then there was a question I didn't quite understand on that the council president's office was trying to determine whether it required an amendment to the ordinance or a council policy. And with regard to the nominating committee, it would be neither. The implementation ordinance specifically says that that the commission may develop a standard operating procedure for the nomination process, and standard operating procedures are simply approved by the council. It's a CPP procedure, not a city council procedure. Now, with regard to the selection process for the executive director, that could well be a council policy. I don't think that they would put that much detail into an ordinance itself. But anyway, it's making its way through the process, and we're waiting to hear back with regard to, we're assuming it's going to go to PSNL first, and whether it will be a operating procedure or a council policy or a ordinance amendment, we'll have to wait and see. And that kind of covers a D2, since Roman Spruce is unable to make it today. We don't have an update on community outreach meetings with the mayor and city council members. We have been meeting with them. And that has been Brandon and myself. And to date, we've met with the council president, Sean Elo. We've met with Joe Cava from D1. It's in Campbell from D2, Stephen Whitburn from D3. We need to get something scheduled with the council president pro tem, Monica Montgomery Stepp. So we're waiting on that. We've met with, when we have not met with Marnie Wilpert, Marnie von Wilpert from District 5 yet. We did meet with Chris Kate from District 6, but he won't be serving when this comes before the council. And I did see Kent Lee, who will be the new council member, last week, and told him I would give him an update. And then once he's officially in office, we can set up a meeting with him. And then we also need to set up a meeting with Vivian Marino. And she's
that one's actually already set up. It's on the 30th.
Okay. And
Yeah.
Did I already accept that?
I believe so.
Okay. Got so many meetings to said, okay, then we're so I guess we need the one with Monica Montgomery Stepp and
Marnie.
And Marnie. And I guess we can go ahead, and there's no reason why we can't set up a meeting with Kent. And if you need his contact information, Alina, I can get that to you.
Okay.
And I will say that so far, everybody has been supportive of the processes that we've come forward with. Some of them have asked some questions, but everybody has seemed comfortable with the processes we've put forward. And as I think indicated, I think we indicated last week that what the council member Whitburn staff had noticed that there was a discrepancy between our policy and the implementation ordinance, which we corrected. And did you put that on the agenda for? Oh, Charmaine has her hand up anyway. Charmaine?
Yes, I have my hand up for clarification regarding the items that were being, I think you mentioned they were being routed through the system for docketing. We did not start the routing process yet for those two procedures. So hopefully I'll hear back from the council president's office by Friday, and then we will begin with the routing process by then. And what was your next question?
Now I lost my train of thought. What was I? We're talking about
You were talking about a discrepancy.
oh, thank you, Kate. We were going to have I modified the policy so that it incorporates the what the ordinance says rather than our proposal that once the 25 people were 25 new commissioners were selected, that the nominating committee would recommend who gets the 1 year and 2 year seats initially. And the ordinance specifies a process where the city clerk does that by a random drawing. And so I corrected that. And would that be on the agenda for next week, Charmaine? You're muted.
Sorry. We put both of the procedures back on the agenda for approval by the commission just because there was no motion and there was no second, and just to be safe. So both items will be on next week's agenda.
Okay.
And also appear at the end of this meeting packet.
Okay. I didn't recall that. So I guess we'll have to blame Brandon for not having a motion in a second. But anyway, I'm glad somebody caught that and that it'll be officially approved. So thank you.
I mean, I think theoretically seconds weren't necessary because it came from this committee.
Came from a committee, but
Right. But we should have had the motions.
But did we take a vote?
There was a vote.
We
But
voted, but
if there was a vote, then that consists of a motion. Because you're right, it doesn't require a second if it comes from committee, and if we voted on them, that's the equivalent of a motion. But it's not going to hurt to redo
Yeah.
it since we have to change the wording of it anyway.
Yeah, and I just also added proposed at the top, so.
Okay, we have no unfinished business, and so then we can get to the recruitment and nomination process for the permanent commissioners. Oh, I guess I was mistaken in what I put on the agenda. So we'll go back and do the staffing, and then we'll talk about the nomination and selection process. So for the staffing, we have two active searches. The first one is the community engagement coordinator, and we are interviewing them. Well, the selection committee is interviewing them next week. Is it Monday and Tuesday, or are they all on Monday? I forget when it was scheduled.
I think they're all on the 21st, if I remember correctly.
Okay, and I only got 4 invites, and we had 5. Are we waiting to schedule one more, or?
Yes, we're still waiting.
Okay, and we probably ought to maybe schedule a meeting of the committee like half an hour before the first one, just to go over the questions and get ourselves organized. And then we have a meeting tomorrow morning, which is a meeting where we are going to look at the applications for the supervising investigator, and select the ones that we want to interview, and also come up with the interview questions. And anything else with regard to staffing? I think that's it. Our next plan after we get these 2 completed is to do the deputy executive director search, followed by the policy analyst and performance auditor concurrently. So, any questions or? Okay, so I think we're good on that. And so, Dave, you're welcome to stay around for the rest, but don't feel obligated to.
Okay.
And now we'll talk about the recruitment and nominations process for the permanent commissioners, the next steps. And actually, we've kind of gone over that, but maybe just to reiterate that our next step will be to get the city council to approve the procedure that we recommended. And then the second is to select the nominating committee itself. And at our last time we met, we went over the proposed application and flyer for that for the committee. And if there's any further comments on that, we can we can discuss that. And then after the nominating committee has been selected, then the nominating committee will interview all of the applicants, and we'll fill out rating sheets for each of them, and then we'll recommend to the full council the 25 people, including the 2 youth representatives, when 25 people, and they will each be assigned to a seat, whether it be a council designated youth at large, etc. And we had scheduled a meeting, a joint meeting of the recruitment committee and the outreach committee for the purpose of promoting the availability for people to nominate themselves or to apply to be on the commissioner. And we had to reschedule that meeting because we can't we can't have a meeting where we have a majority of the commission present per the Brown Act. And so one suggestion was that we do that work at this meeting, at a future meeting, and make sure that both Kevin and Robin are able to make it. And I see your hand up, Kate, and I'll call you on in a second. Does that sound like a reasonable approach? Okay, and so we're going to put together our game plan for promoting the availability of the applications, and so we can maybe work on that. That can be our major discussion item at our next meeting. And I see Kate's handed up.
Yeah, and I probably have an answer if I really looked at everything, but I wasn't at the last meeting, which I think was the 4th. Is that right? Because you didn't have one last week.
That's correct.
And is that the meeting where you put together the announcement about people applying to be on the nominating committee? And if so, is that attached to the minutes, or can I get that
Yes,
so that I
attached.
can send it out?
Well, it's not finalized yet.
Oh,
And but we went over it, and I forget whether it was Lena or Robin, but one of them we had a draft that staff put together, and then we made some recommendations to it.
so it's not ready to be used yet.
It's not ready to be used yet. And if you haven't looked at it, if you have anything, for some reason I was thinking you were at that meeting, but I guess you weren't. If you could, if
Well, you
there's any,
didn't meet last week, remember, because of
Right, yeah.
Veterans Day, and then the week before I was on vacation.
okay. And so if you want to, you can take a look at that, and it's
Okay.
in the packet for today. And if you see anything that that you'd like to suggest, you can email me and Charmaine, and we can, hopefully it could be something that doesn't require bringing it to the full committee, but if we do, we can put that on the agenda next time. But yeah, it's in we have both the flyer and a application that's attached. And so if you have any feedback, yes, definitely feel free to let us know, because it's not finalized yet. And I also would say to hold off on that, Kate, because we want to wait until the city council approves the process.
So what I'm hearing is that the standard operating procedure isn't even going to go to city council until January for the nominating for the nominations, or is that when it goes to PSNLN and then it goes to
Yeah.
so there's
yeah,
more delay is what I'm hearing, significant
right.
delay.
And
we're telling
I'm
people,
not sure it's significant, but and I'm not sure I would call it delay, but it's normal city process. But it has not been docketed yet, and my understanding is that the plan is to bring both of those to PSNLN and then to the full council. One of the council members we talked to thought that we could bring it to the full council to expedite it, but that would be the proper protocol would be to take it to PSNLN. And so
well, I'm just trying to figure out timeline, because people are asking and people are already sending in applications. And if we say, well, and we're encouraging applications, but then if we say, oh, well, we don't even know when this process is going to be authorized, and something's in January and maybe in February and maybe in March. And so it would be helpful for us to be able to tell the community what the proposed timeline is for this really happening.
I understand. And so I guess the timeline is that we anticipate that it will go before PSNLN in January. Hopefully it could go before the full council in January as well, but probably a couple of weeks after it goes to PSNLN, it goes to the full council. It is an operating procedure. I don't think that it would be subject to a meeting of confer. So I would assume that as soon as the council does that, we would then be ready to accept applications. And so that's why I've developed the application and the flyer, and would So I would go ahead and, I mean, it's fine to recruit people, but we want to wait until the process is completed before we accept applications, because you may have to modify it if the council modifies anything.
Well, as I recall from a prior meeting, there's a generic application that we're sending people to on the city website.
Oh,
and then there's
you're
gonna be
confusing
a
the two. Yeah, so
Pardon?
there's the nominating committee, and then there is the application for the commission. And so we're gonna,
Right.
and so what I'm suggesting we need to hold off on is the application for the nominating committee in case the city council were to make any modifications to the process. But yes, you can go ahead and encourage people to submit an application, and they can do that at the boards and commissions website. Is it onboard.sandiego.gov? And they can fill it out there. And then the plan is to send a supplemental application form to the people that submit it, because that's a generic application, as you just mentioned, and sometimes there's some additional information we'll need to collect from them as well. But yes, you can go ahead and tell people who are interested to begin submitting their applications on the city's website. And at our next meeting, we're going to be actually going over, that's what we just put on the agenda, the application and the flyers for that. And I don't think we need to wait for the city council to distribute the flyers for the commission itself, because that's already been defined by the ordinance. So that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
So it still seems to me that if we're talking January, February, that a timeline for people who are applying to actually be considered and processed is probably another couple months. So we're looking at spring, probably March, April.
Yeah, that's what I would assume. Yes. So I'm hoping that we will get them appointed by March, April. And so, Brandon.
I was just going to add, on Monday, San Diego for Justice had a forum, and there's about 15 or so people about how to become a commissioner. And so we kind of explained what the process was. It was myself and Robin from the commission were there, and we were able to answer a bunch of questions. So like I said, there's about 15 people, just shy of 2 hours, but that was on Monday. So I think that was pretty helpful.
Is that the one that SDJ did?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Yes, I think that covers that item of the agenda. And so we can, why don't we just plan on finalizing the, got a recording. Okay, I don't know what happened there, but
I think it was because Charmaine looks like she got either logged off or kicked off. I think it's why it stopped, but yeah.
okay, yeah.
We're good.
And Charmaine, as I indicated, had to go to a budget training, so that's why she had to log off. And now I lost my train of thought again.
I think we just moved on from
Oh yeah,
all
what I was
the-
going to say
yeah.
is that we can actually finalize. Did Kate leave too? Oh, they're right there.
She's still here.
You just moved under my screen. Why don't we finalize it since Kate hasn't had a chance to look at it yet? The nominating committee materials next week, and then we can work on the application process and flyer and the way to disseminate it at our next meeting. And I guess looking at the calendar, I am guessing that this group does not want to meet on the Friday after Thanksgiving.
No, thank you.
And so why don't we plan on doing that on December the 2nd, and we'll see if we can get both Kevin and Robin at that meeting. And if they're not available, we may need to schedule it around them, because I think we need to have both the outreach and the recruitment committees involved in that process. But
Is that going to be back to 12:30?
yes.
Okay, I won't be able to make it then. I have a seminar from noon to 4:30 on that Friday.
No, I'm amenable to doing it earlier if it works for other people.
Well, I don't know, because I also have a 9 o'clock court hearing. So
Okay.
if we could set it maybe for 11:30, I could I could probably be done and then get out and over to my seminar.
Okay, does anybody here have a conflict with 11:30 on the 2nd? Okay, then why don't we tentatively plan on that, and we'll go with that, assuming that Charmaine's available and also that Kevin and Robin Spruce are available. Okay, and then put the agenda back up, please. And we're waiting for it to come up. The next item is a status update on the operating procedures, the list that we approved a few meetings ago. I'm not seeing it on my screen. Is anybody else seeing it? And I wonder if Alina is frozen. Oh,
I apologize. Can you guys, I'm back on now. My screen completely froze on me.
okay, that's no problem. That happens on
Try
Zoom.
again. Okay. Can you see my screen?
There we go. Now we can. Thank you. And and actually, if you want to scroll down to the list of operating procedures.
Just out of curiosity, is it still recording for you?
How do I tell?
Like
Yeah, it does. It does say recording in the upper left.
Okay, thank you. So, okay, operating procedures, right?
Yeah. Well, scroll down a little bit on your screen on materials provided. We can see where it is.
I heard him drinking a lot.
Oh.
I heard him drinking a lot, and then I'm like, oh, he's gonna go.
Oh.
And then a few minutes later, I'm like,
Brandon, you need to mute yourself.
oh, sorry.
Okay, and this is what I was talking about, and so I kind of wanted to go over this to see to keep us on track, and so the first three are, well, the first two are done. The third one is essentially done. We're waiting for the supervising investigator to come on board before we finalize that. The next one was the standard operating procedures for review and evaluation of SDPD investigations of misconduct. And I want to talk about that a little bit. I don't have anything in writing, but I have given it some thought. And actually, it's not going to require that much revision from the interim operating procedures. My goal was to keep the procedures at kind of a high level, so that if we have details in terms of forms and procedures, we don't have to have those approved by the city council every time we make a small change. But we have the framework approved by the city council, and actually the framework for the review is actually is I think less than a page in the interim operating procedures. And so I think we can keep that the same. Some changes I was thinking of making were adding to our findings, a finding of whether or not the investigation was complete and thorough. So we would not only agree or disagree with the finding, but we would also indicate whether or not we think that the internal affairs investigation itself was complete and thorough. That we would eliminate all references to complaint-based investigations, because we'll be reviewing all investigations of misconduct, and so we'll change that. And then my thought is that we would also eliminate the distinction between category 1 and category 2, and have the commission will still work in teams and make a recommendation on whether they agree or disagree, and whether or not they think that the investigation was complete for each of them. And then I'm going to propose a one-page form that would not be something that would be part of the procedure itself, so that it wouldn't require city council approval, but it would kind of encapsulate what I would like to see. The first part of the form would be a one paragraph or two paragraph at most summary of the incident, listing the officers by number or letter. The second part would identify those officers so that we could use the first part for putting on our website. The third part would be essentially the findings chart that we currently have. And so the committee would fill in whether or not they agree or disagree. And then there would be a space for them to, if there's any comments they want to add. So if they agree with comment or disagree with comment, they would put the comments there. We would keep the resource chart so that we would have a documentation of what they looked at. Probably the degree to which they want to do a deep dive would vary by case, and so they can make their own determination of how much detail they want to detail and time they want to spend on each case. And then something just that I forgot to mention with regard to the procedure itself is that I want to include in there a process for the team to be able to recommend, after doing their initial review of the case, that the case be referred for investigation if it meets the investigation guidelines. And then secondly, a procedure for the commission itself to ask for an investigation when the case is presented to them. So basically at any stage in the process, but particularly after the initial review of the case and after, I guess there could be 3 points where there could be a recommendation for an investigation. The first one is after the team has done their initial review. The second could be after they've completed reviewing it. They may have found some discrepancies or things of concern and they would like to do an investigation. And so they could request that the commission authorize an investigation. And then thirdly, the commission itself, after the case is presented to them, could make that determination that it would be referred to for an investigation. And then if there is an investigation, the commission would not make its own finding, obviously, until the commission's investigation was completed. So that's what I envisioned. I don't know if there's any people want to comment on that now, and I'll put it in writing for a subsequent meeting. But does that sound reasonable? Nancy?
Do you envision that they would keep the case open for all of that to happen? Or at what point are they going to be able to close their case? I mean, they have like a 1-year limit. So how do we?
I think that I think that's an interesting question. You're asking in terms of if we do an independent investigation, when does IA close their case?
Or even if we don't, for how long are they going to be required to keep their case open for the commission?
Well, obviously it can't be beyond the 1 year. But we could still, we could still disagree with their findings after the 1 year, but they wouldn't be able to impose discipline. Which is why I think it's important if in the initial review of the case, the team has enough concerns that they would like to have an investigation, or if it's, they think there was, the issues are significant enough that the case itself merits an investigation. So that could be done early in the process so that we can keep within that 1 year. But that's a good point that we need to put that into the procedure, how we're going to deal with.
I think we also need to double check, because my understanding is after that 1 year mark, we can't disagree,
That's a good point. You're right.
because that's considered an adverse finding. So I think we have to make sure if we have a disagreement, that has to happen prior to that 1-year mark required by POBAR.
That's a good point. So let me think about that some more as I put it together. Yeah, which I think is why it probably will be important that if the incident merits an investigation, that is decided early in the process, we can get that 1 year, get it completed within the 1 year, so that if a department chooses to make changes, they will have the benefit of our recommendation. Okay, is your hand still up, Nancy, from the previous question?
I had another question or issue about the team organization, which I think if anything, we have proven it to be problematic. And I had thought about trying to have, and you mentioned 2 people on a team, which I think is a perfectly doable thing. But the concept of a team that's a fixed pairing of people, I think is a problem, because we have people drop out and we're not, what's the word I'm looking for? We can't react quickly enough when people are dropping out, and reform teams and make them look good and be a viable resource, a viable review resource. So I was just wondering if there wasn't another approach that could be looked at for the putting people together to do case review.
There can be. My thought is that that probably doesn't need to go into the operating procedure, so that if something's not working, the commission has flexibility itself to determine how they're going to organize their teams. And probably is an issue that the permanent commission would need to decide, but I think it's a valid issue, and I would agree with you. I think, and I forget whether or not the current interim procedures specify what the number of people on a team. If not, I'm comfortable with putting a 2-person team. And
that has implications for team leader stuff too, which I think we need to rethink.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I think that's the kind of detail that I think we ought to let the new commission work on themselves.
But they don't have any experience with it. And so I think we ought to be making recommendations based on the experience of what we've just been through or going through.
Well, I agree with you.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, but in terms of the procedure itself, my plan is to work on the procedure that city council will approve, and also a draft of the report that we will be submitting. And I also think that my vision is that in the future, we won't actually be writing reports like we are now, that we will be putting the information into a database. And so a database would be set up. It would be connected to the complaints database, and so it would automatically populate the information regarding the officers and the allegations, and then the team would go online and they would fill in whether they agree or disagree, and enter their comments and check off what they reviewed. And then after the commission votes on it, that would be entered into the database, and it would automatically generate the letters that would go to the complainants, and then it would automatically populate onto the website. And so anyway, and so I think once we get the system designed, one of our key things will be to secure an IT person to help us map out the process and decide what software we need to do. It could be off the shelf software, but it'll need to be customized and so forth. But my vision is that we'll be able to do all those things online, and that it would expedite the and it would also make it much easier to compile data for the annual report or to do our own research. And Nancy, you got another question?
No, I'll take it. I don't know how to get it down.
Okay.
There it goes. I found it.
Okay. Anyway, and so then move on to the next one. The next one is the procedures for governance, but essentially the bylaws. Do you have those finished, Nancy?
No. I've looked at it. It's pretty, I like our bylaws, and so I'm gonna have to do some more thinking about how to customize them for a new commission.
Okay. Anyway, so just keeping things on the radar, and so Nancy's working on that. Several things are assigned to the staff: the complaint administration process, the communications process. Dwayne is working on the discipline and the subpoena process. You want to scroll on down. Staff is going to work on the review and evaluation of compliance with federal, state, and local reporting requirements, but we were going to wait until we had our performance auditor on board. Mediation, going to wait for the new commission. Okay, the next one I guess we need to begin working on. So I'm trying to identify the ones that we need to work on as a is the training program. And Kevin and Diana had agreed to work on that. And so maybe at a subsequent meeting, I guess we have 2 more meetings before we take a break for the holidays. And so maybe we can schedule either the 9th or the 16th and have a discussion with Diana and Kevin regarding the training process. And so I don't know if you've had a chance to think about that, Diana, but if not, if you can begin thinking about what some of the components are, then maybe we can have a discussion here at the committee, and then you can finalize it into a procedure.
Okay, we have a process or a document, right, for this?
Yeah, currently, and Charmaine can probably provide it to you. We have, I forget how many components, and Nancy just walked away. I think, oh no, she's there. No, she walked away. I think it's 8 different, is it 6 components? Okay. And so we already have one for the old CRB.
Right.
And
So
and
could
so
I have that? Could I have that document, or is it? Do I ask Charmaine for it?
Why don't you get it from Charmaine? And
Okay,
Alina, if
all
you
right.
can, Alina, can you make sure that Charmaine sends her those components? Yeah, that obviously is the best place to start.
Right.
And then there'll be some additional things that will need to be done, based upon the new duties of the commission. But that's and as you're doing that, thinking about the possibility of utilizing outside experts from NACOL, et cetera, to help conduct the training.
Okay.
And then, probably too, since we will have by then a supervising investigator and so forth, we can have some of the training done by our outside counsel. We could have some of the training done by our staff, and then we could also have some of the training done by outside experts. And we have money in the budget to pay for that type of training. Okay.
And then if I can just add something really quick, when we were at the NACOL conference last month, we had there was a presentation by, and I had a quick conversation with Chicago COPA.
Yeah.
It's one of their oversight groups. They do a citizens academy, and they were going to send us a framework of what they do, and then we could see if we could kind of repurpose that for the needs here in San Diego. So I'll follow up again. I know they had a budget meeting on their side, so they told me we'll have to get back to you in a couple of weeks, but that was about 3 or 4 weeks ago. So I'll reach out to them again. But I think from what they were saying is theirs was far more in depth than what I think we would need for, at least for a citizen piece. But there's a lot I think we can do for a commissioner piece.
Okay, thank you, Brandon.
Okay. And then the next one is the outreach and communications, and Robin, as the outreach chair, agreed to work on that. And so we can remind her. Let me see. Okay, and Kate was going to work on the community evaluation of this commission's processes and performance. And so you could begin thinking about that at least, so we can maybe discuss that at a future meeting. And the conflict of interest code is completed, and the CPP staff and the policy analysts will work on the operating procedure for the tracking of and reporting of police community policing standards, and scroll on down. And I think that was it. And so just to kind of remind people of what their assignments are. And let's go back to the agenda. I think it was the last item on the agenda. Okay. And so we're going to schedule the next meeting for 11 o'clock. Is that correct? What we decided on December the 2nd. And hold on just a second. Let me just double check my calendar before I do that. I don't think there's hold on just a second here. Yeah, it looks like my calendar's free at that time, so we'll put on that, and then go back to the full screen here. And the topic there will be the recruitment and application process and materials for the permanent commissioners will be the main focus of that meeting. And then I think the items for future agendas will be the operating procedures we just went over. And then if you can scroll down a little bit, we had some maybe parking lot issues. I'm not sure whether we still have them on the list. Go on down a little bit further. Yeah, so we did have well, training program we just talked about, and that's going to be a future committee meeting. Ways to address barriers to service. I think we need to still discuss that at a future meeting. I think transparency and accountability issues will be, and quality assurance may be incorporated into our operating procedures, and the evaluation with the reporting requirements will be an operating procedure, and the models of case review is what we were just talking about, and that'll be there. So I think for our future meetings, we will go, work our way through the different operating procedures that we'll need to recommend to the new commission, and that will eventually require city council approval. Anything anybody else wants to add to the agendas? Okay. And seeing none, we're going to adjourn 7 minutes early unless there's an objection. And seeing no objection, we will see you all. We're not meeting next week because of Thanksgiving. So everybody have a good Thanksgiving, and then we'll see you on December the 2nd and at 11 o'clock, assuming that we can get both Robin Spruce and Kevin to attend at that time. And so thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.